Beverly Hills, Rodeo Drive, April 2019. The sun was blazing with that merciless Los Angeles brightness, and the sidewalks gleamed like mirrors. Women clicking along in their Christian Louboutin heels emerged from luxury boutiques while valet attendants parked $200,000 Bentleys. Every square foot of this world screamed money, status, and showmanship. And right in the middle of this world, 70-year-old Ozzy Osbourne was walking. Black t-shirt, faded jeans, those famous oversized sunglasses. Nobody gave him a second glance. Just an old man, maybe a retired mechanic, maybe the gardener for one of Beverly Hills' wealthy residents. Whatever he was, it didn't matter. You know what mattered in this neighborhood, how bright you shined, how loud you announced your wealth. Ozzy sometimes wanted to be alone, to think, to disappear among ordinary people. Being famous was a strange thing. When people recognized you, they either screamed and asked for photos or treated you like some kind of deity. But when they didn't recognize you, you were invisible. And today, Ozzy had chosen to be invisible. A small coffee cup in his hand, he walked slowly. There was an old ache in his right knee from the concert years. His legs weren't what they used to be anymore, but his mind, his spirit, they were still sharp, still burning. Just then, he spotted a motorcycle parked at the edge of the sidewalk ahead of him. But this was no ordinary motorcycle. A 2019 Harley Davidson CVO Limited, black, adorned with chrome details, custom leather seat. On the bike was a small vanity plate that read, "Rich Kid." Ozzy chuckled to himself. Of course. What else would you expect in the heart of Beverly Hills? The motorcycle was so polished that it reflected the sunlight and nearly blinded him. As Ozzy took a sip of his coffee, he stepped back, but his foot caught in a small crack at the edge of the curb. His body lurched forward. Instinctively, his right hand reached out for something to steady himself, and his hand landed right on the handlebar of that Harley. What happened next took only seconds, but for everyone watching, it felt like slow motion. The motorcycle began to tilt sideways. Ozzy tried to hold it, but his 70-year-old arms weren't strong enough to lift a 900-pound machine. That beautiful, gleaming Harley crashed onto the sidewalk. The sound of metal hitting stone echoed through the middle of Rodeo Drive. People turned. Those sitting outside cafes stood up. Valet attendants started running. And at that exact moment, the door of one of the boutiques swung open. Out came a young man, maybe 22 or 23 years old. His dark brown hair was slicked back with gel. Versace t-shirt, Gucci shoes, a Rolex on his wrist. His eyes went wide when he saw the motorcycle. His mouth hung open for a second. Then he looked at Ozzy. His face flushed red, veins bulging. The young man came running over. He raised his voice so loud it could be heard from the boutique across the street. "What the hell did you do, old man?" he shouted. The people around them stopped. Nobody intervened. In Beverly Hills, people loved watching drama, but not getting involved. The young man rushed to the motorcycle, dropped to his knees. He placed his hand on the painted metal body, as if checking on an injured baby. His face twisted with pain. "This thing cost $45,000. It has custom paintwork. I had the seat imported from Italy. And you... He pointed his finger at Ozzy. Ozzy was still holding his coffee cup. His expression was calm. He didn't remove his sunglasses, just stood there and watched. "Who do you think you are? Did nobody ever teach you how to walk properly on a sidewalk?" The young man's voice trembled with rage. A small crowd had begun to form around them. Phones came out. Everything was being recorded. Ozzy slowly took a step forward. He still hadn't said a word. The young man stood up, positioning himself directly in front of Ozzy. His physique made it clear he spent plenty of time at the gym. But Ozzy just looked at him. The young man continued. "This bike is worth more than anything you'll ever see in your life, old man. This bike is worth more than everything you own. Do you understand? This is something your dirty hands shouldn't even be touching." Ozzy finished the last drops of his coffee. He slowly tossed the cup into the nearby trash bin. His hands trembled slightly, but not from fear, from age. His hands always trembled now. He finally removed his sunglasses. Those famous blue eyes, slightly clouded but still sharp, met the young man's gaze. Then he spoke. His voice was low, calm. That Birmingham accent was still there. "I understand, son," he said. "I knocked over your bike. I'm sorry. It was an accident." The young man didn't recognize Ozzy's face. Why would he? Rock history to him was nothing more than playlists on a streaming app. Black Sabbath? Who were they? "You're sorry?" the young man said. "You're saying you're sorry? You just knocked my $45,000 bike to the ground. Sure, I have insurance, but that's not how this works. The paint is scratched. Look at that chrome piece. There's a scratch. That scratch costs $3,000 to fix. And you're saying sorry." Ozzy bowed his head slightly. He walked over to the motorcycle. He bent down, struggling with his knees. He looked at the Harley lying on the ground. There really was a small scratch. On the left side. On the fuel tank. Maybe a 2-inch line. Yes, it needed to be fixed. But the young man's reaction was as if his house had burned down. Ozzy stood back up. That same calm gaze. "You're right," he said. "It needs to be fixed. How much did you say? $3,000? The young man couldn't believe it. "You can't afford that, old-timer. Look at yourself. Your clothes are from H&M or something. Your shoes are falling apart. How are you going to pay $3,000? The people around them were getting uncomfortable now. Some were shaking their heads. This young man was going too far. But still, nobody intervened. Ozzy pulled out his wallet. An old, worn leather wallet. He searched inside for something. He pulled out a credit card. American Express Centurion card. The card that people who aren't invited can't have, with no limit. But the young man had no idea what it was. He just saw a black card. "Here," Ozzy said, holding out the card. "Call whoever you want with this. Get it fixed. Send the bill to me." The young man took the card. He looked at it. Then he laughed. A mocking laugh. "What is this? A grocery store rewards card? You're going to pay me with this?" Just then, a man stepped forward from the crowd. Middle-aged, wearing a suit, Mercedes keys in his hand. His face showed an expression of shock. Are you Ozzy Osbourne?" he said. The world stopped. The young man's laughter froze. His head turned. He looked at the Mercedes owner. "What?" he said. The man in the suit approached Ozzy. "My God, you really are Ozzy Osbourne. Ozzy from Black Sabbath. My youth was spent listening to your music. The Paranoid album changed my life." The man's eyes had welled up. Ozzy smiled slightly. "Thank you, mate," he said. "Those were good days." More voices started coming from the crowd. "Is that Ozzy Osbourne?" "No way. Can I take a photo?" The young man's face went pale. He was still holding Ozzy's card in his hand. His mind was confused. Ozzy Osbourne. He knew the name, of course. He was a singer, right? Old guy. But rich? Ozzy gently touched the young man's shoulder. "Son," he said, his voice still calm. "I really am sorry for knocking over your bike, but I want you to understand something. With that card, I could buy your bike 1,000 times over, and none of that matters." The young man opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Ozzy continued. "But here's the real problem. When you looked at me, what did you see? You saw an old man, someone poor, someone worthless, and that's how you treated me." The people around them were completely silent now. Phones were still recording, but nobody was speaking. "I'm lucky," Ozzy said. "I've made a lot of money in my life. I've done concerts all around the world, sold millions of albums. But you know what? When I was 18, I lived in the poorest neighborhood in Birmingham. My dad worked the night shift. My mum cleaned rich people's houses, and there were nights when we went hungry." Ozzy's voice cracked slightly. But he continued. "Back then, there were people who treated me the same way you just did. They called me a poor kid. They said I'd never amount to anything. And you know what? They could have been right. Statistically, they were right. But I got lucky. I had my music, and my music brought me here." The young man lowered his eyes to the ground. The shame was written all over his face now. Ozzy slowly took his card back. "Get your bike fixed," he said. "Give me a number. I'll pay the bill. But I want something from you." The young man raised his head. "What?" he said, his voice barely audible. "Next time you look at someone and see them as worthless," Ozzy said, "stop and think. That person might have a story you know nothing about. Someone who looks poor might actually have wealth you can't even imagine. Or more importantly, even if that person is poor in terms of money, they might have a character you could never possess." The young man just stood there. He didn't know what to do. The crowd around them was still watching, but the atmosphere had changed now. There was no anger. There was shame. A silent, heavy shame. Ozzy pulled a business card from his wallet. It had only a phone number written on it. Nothing else. "This is my assistant's number," he said. "Call them. Tell them where the bike needs to be fixed. Send the bill to me." He pressed the card into the young man's hand. The young man took the card, looked at it. Then he looked at Ozzy's face. For the first time, he really looked. And he noticed what he saw in that aged face. This wasn't just an old man. This man had seen life. He had seen pain. He had seen the top, and he had seen the bottom. And now here he stood, calm, dignified, forgiving. The young man's voice trembled. "I'm really sorry, Mr. Osbourne. I didn't know." Ozzy nodded. "You didn't know because you didn't look, son. The only thing you thought was worth seeing was whether I looked like I had money. But that's not where life's real value lies." The man in the suit was still there. "Mr. Osbourne," he said respectfully, "could I take a photo with you? Please. I want to show my son. He's trying to become a musician too." Ozzy smiled. "Of course, mate." The photo was taken. But that was just the beginning. Others from the crowd approached as well. "Mr. Osbourne, can I get one too? Could I get an autograph?" Ozzy said yes to all of them. He gave each one his time. An elderly woman held his hand, thanking him with tears in her eyes. A young girl asked him to say hello to Sharon. A middle-aged man said, "You were the soundtrack of my youth." The young man stood off to the side. He had even forgotten to pick up his motorcycle. He just watched. And he noticed something. These people weren't showing respect to Ozzy for his money. They respected him for who he was. These people loved him because Ozzy had given them something. Music, memories, emotion. When the photos were done, Ozzy turned to the young man. "Want some help lifting the bike?" he said. The young man was surprised. "You? But We'll lift it together," Ozzy said. The man in the suit came over too. "I'll help as well." The three of them lifted that 900-pound Harley together. Ozzy couldn't apply much force, of course, because of his age. But he was there. He was helping. When the bike was upright again, the young man looked at the scratch. It didn't seem so important now. It was just a small scratch. It would get fixed. "What's your name, son?" Ozzy asked. "Brandon," the young man said. "Brandon Castellano." "Italian?" Ozzy said. "My dad's Italian. My mom's American." Ozzy nodded. "Nice name. Brandon, you want me to tell you a story?" Brandon nodded. He was ready to listen now. Ozzy leaned against the motorcycle seat, took a breath. "In the 70s, during Black Sabbath's first tour, we stopped at a gas station in Detroit one day. Traveling in an old van, broke as hell, barely enough cash to fill the tank. I went inside to grab something. The owner looked at me and said, 'We don't want your kind here. Get lost.' Long hair, torn clothes. To him, I was worthless trash." Ozzy paused, smiled. 6 months later, we played Detroit. 12,000-seat arena. Sold out. And guess who wanted a backstage pass? That gas station owner. Brandon's eyes went wide. "Are you serious?" Ozzy replied, "Dead serious. My assistants recognized him. I let him in, not to talk to him, just so he could see. Those kids he said those things to were now playing for thousands of people. And that man, standing there, he finally understood. Looks aren't everything." Brandon lowered his head. "I did the same thing to you. I looked at how you appeared and I assumed." "Yes," Ozzy said, "and that was your mistake. But Brandon, I'm not angry at you. Because you're young. You're learning. Some of us learn these lessons early. Some of us learn them late. What matters is what you do once you've learned." Brandon lowered his head in shame. then spoke. "Mr. Osbourne, I'd heard they call you the Prince of Darkness. I thought you were supposed to be scary." Ozzy laughed. That famous, wild Ozzy laugh. "Prince of Darkness? Yeah, they call me that, because I bit a bat's head off on stage. But look, Brandon, that was just a show. The real me? The real me is a working-class kid from Birmingham. Been married to my Sharon for over 40 years. I've got grandkids. I grow tomatoes in my garden. And sometimes I just go for a walk and watch people." Brandon wiped his eyes. He wasn't crying, but his eyes were full. "How can I thank you?" Ozzy smiled. "By treating someone else well. One day you'll be old too, Brandon, and maybe some young person will disrespect you. When that happens, remember today, and treat them the same way. Forgive, teach, let it go." And Ozzy walked away. In the middle of Rodeo Drive, in the sunlight, with that aged but upright posture. The crowd parted for him on its own. Some applauded, some called their loved ones on their phones, saying, "I just saw Ozzy Osbourne." Brandon stayed there, next to his motorcycle, Ozzy's business card in his hand, and inside him a deep, burning shame, but also gratitude, because today he had learned the most valuable lesson of his life, more valuable than money, more valuable than fame. Ozzy Osbourne, the Prince of Darkness, had taught him what real darkness was. Real darkness was only looking at people from the outside. Light was trying to see what was within them. That night when Brandon went home, he told his mother everything. His mother nodded. "If your father were alive, he would have taught you the same thing," she said. "He came from a poor family too, but you were born rich, and you forgot." 3 months later, a package arrived at Brandon's door. Inside was a CD, the Paranoid album, with a handwritten note. "Brandon, the power of music isn't just in listening, it's in feeling. Listen to this album and remember, not everything is image. Love from my heart, Ozzy." Brandon listened to that album that day. Iron Man, War Pigs, Paranoid. And for the first time, he understood. This music wasn't about wealth. This music was about being real, surviving, fighting. Today, years later, Brandon Castellano runs a mentorship program for young people in Los Angeles. On his office wall hangs a photo of the scratched side of his Harley Davidson. He tells every young person who comes through the same story. Looks can be deceiving. A person's worth isn't measured by money. And sometimes life's greatest lessons come from the most unexpected moments. If this story touched you, like, share, and subscribe to the Prince of Darkness stories, because sometimes the Prince of Darkness is actually the brightest light in the room, and sometimes a fallen motorcycle is the best reason to stand back up.